No, like, yeah. The video clips are the best board member, superintendent of the year.
Names of all of those. Jeff and their friends.
Yeah, they love Decorah.
Yeah, good. It was the stuff, I can't remember. Have they been here before?
Yeah, when you think about 20 years. Yeah.
Late.
Yeah, we are late. Excuse me. Okay, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Roll call. We have all directors present in person. We have a volunteer to read the mission and vision statement. Ron, thank you.
At Decorah Community School District, we embrace student learning and well-being as our fundamental purpose. We will, in partnership with our students, families, and community, make the world a better place. The mission of the Decorah Community School District is learning, thriving, creating our legacy. The vision of the Decorah Community School District is Decorah Community School District will be a collaborative, innovative, learning center organization, empowering students to embrace their personal strengths and create their future.
Thank you. Seeing no old business on our agenda, I'll seek approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
I'll second. Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion or comments? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next is the approval of consent items, so please. Be forward if there's any questions that you have about any of our bills or personnel updates. And if no questions or discussions, I'll accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next is open forum and communication from the public. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone giving me direct eye contact, so we will move on. There's no presentation in the month of August. And so we will move forward to new business. And the first item of new business on our agenda tonight is approval of the NICC 24 to 25 concurrent enrollment contract. Tim, can you
So,
talk us? through
yeah,
that?
so this is an annual agreement that we have with NICC. This allows us to offer classes and then provide reimbursement. What would you add to that, Brad?
No, it's an annually approved thing that allows us the ability to be able to teach concurrent classes at the high school with our teachers. As well as for students who participate in classes that maybe we don't offer, but are offered through NCC. So approval is recommended based on the fact that we do this, have these classes built on a regular.
Mhm.
And we're super fortunate to have a lot of staff on the Decorah.
Very
That's not
fortunate.
something I was used to, but coming to this district and having a lot of classes, a lot of concurrent classes that we can teach on our own campus by our own staff. So we're super fortunate to have that,
To get college credits.
to get college credits.
Yeah, it's a great partnership and I'm glad that we're fully taking advantage of that. Are there any changes to this contract from last year to this year to note?
I'm not aware
I
of
didn't
it.
see anything. That was-
Okay, nothing stood out to me. Anyone else have questions or concerns?
Is it tuition the same? Prices in high school, that didn't change?
I don't know if I have the answers about that. It's better if they would change the fee raise and that have you seen them? I haven't seen anything.
Now I'll move to approve the 2024-2025 concurrent enrollment contract.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next is approval of security camera upgrades with the Iowa School Security Grant Funding, which I know that Sean worked on submitting. Is that correct, Sean? Yeah, okay, so attached are bids that have been collected from 3 different vendors. So you can see the hardware cost and setup and installation and total cost
And
and a recommendation.
our recommendation, I started telecom. So they're at the bottom, kind of, repeated at the bottom of the page. So what you need to know is we're the grant allotted $50,000 per building. I know when we first got it, we thought we could pool the money and maybe just use it on a couple buildings. And as we got into the process, we discovered that you have to use $50,000 on each building. And if you say, well, we don't want to do cameras at that building because West Side, is a smart building. Then you have to work on their list of other recommendations for the building. And so the next recommendation or a recommendation might have been like, what was it, the shatterproof glass film. And we both, for a couple reasons, one of us is a volunteer firefighter, didn't think that that was the best way to use our resources. So we did want to have cameras. We understand that we're using at least $50,000 in each building. I think what you need to know is these cameras are portable, will be able to be moved certainly out of John Klein and West Side to the new John Klein when that's built. This gets all our cameras on the same system. Local law enforcement has access to that system. If there would be an event that they would need to see what's going on in the building, they could tap right in. Super valuable for the day-to-day operation of the school, but also for emergency situations. So the commitment is the $250,000 from the grant, but then local funds, which we would take out of PEPAL or SAVE, would be the $77,820.
Mhm.
Sean, is there something you would like to add to that?
Just because a question that I had from somebody was, how many cameras is it? It's 174 cameras. At Cary Lee Middle School, it requires a little bit of wiring. Cary Lee's 29 cables pulled. Middle school's 34 cables pulled. So there's some cost with the wiring cables that's included. Talking about the grant's a federal grant, but it's through the state of Iowa, through the emergency management. For the state of Iowa. So we have to follow federal rules plus state rules. That's why we do a whole policy updates to match what we need to do federal and state.
And we could go through all the hoops we had to jump through just to get to this point, but they were long. And I was only involved in some of them, and it was annoying to me.
So are the wiring costs that you just mentioned, are those included in the setup and installation estimates in front of us?
Yep.
Thank you for all the time. Federal grants are a lot, so thank you for applying. And that was a quick turnaround. You heard back from them quickly because this was just submitted a month or two ago, right?
They want us to have it installed and spent by the end of June or December of this year. So
Yeah.
they've been working pretty hard.
Right.
So when is installation expected to be completed?
It's like the next 3 months.
Mhm.
Or soon. Soon as they actually even asked me if they heard, I heard anything. They're going to them.
Mhm.
Where is 5-Star Telecom?
Outside of lacrosse. It's there. They've done wiring for the district before, all the districts, in Northeast Iowa. Keystone, there's a lot of schools in our area, utilize that for the cameras, for cop cameras.
Right, and they've worked in Decorah school district recently too. Good.
Yeah, I looked at this and I looked at a $327,000 project, great, that $50,000 would be each building. And I did look at the $77,000 cost that we will have to incur in order to make it happen.
Mhm.
After talking to Tim and we talked a little bit about it and the fact that, we can wire the new school, and it's gonna have more square foot in the new school. And we should be able to take these cameras from West Side and John Klein so we've got them that we'll be able to incorporate into the extra square foot. So we're putting kind of that cost, that we have right now, being able to utilize it now, wire it correctly for these, right, when the building's built. And then I have to buy some additional cameras for.
Yeah.
And John Klein's, so.
It's a great investment with return on investment of the 77,000 that we could potentially approve and invest.
And obviously the new John Klein school, safety is an opportunity for us to make that a modern safe building, and this gives opportunity to put money and value towards that.
Right,
One thing to just put in your brains, these are cloud-based cameras, meaning, the cameras themselves record the video and store on the cameras, which is really nice, management wise.
mhm,
In previous years, we spent about $70,000 every year to replace, one school's worth of servers every year for a 5-year rotation. That eliminates that $70,000 need every year. This quote includes a 5-year license for the cloud management. So 5 years will have to do a software purchase. That's right around $25,000 a year at right now is the price range.
right. So built-in savings and efficiency with storage and data management. Right,
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the cameras under the school safety grant.
Second,
okay, we have a motion and a second.
We need to be more clear that we're accepting the bid from 5 Star Telecom.
Within the motion,
Good idea.
I think that's, would you like to amend your motion, Ron?
For 5 Star Telecom.
Okay.
and I amend my second as well.
Any other comments for discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next approval of the 2024 and 2025 level 1 and level 2 investigators. And this are assigned roles and responsibilities for individuals at different levels in each building.
And I'm adding in, West Side Investigator Shannon Putnam Dibble. Because we haven't used that in the past. This is an annual approval. The level 1 investigator is typically the building principal. Level 2 is the police department.
Mhm.
Level 1 and level 2 investigations, this regards sexual misconduct in a school district. It's required that each district have one of these. And I don't know, not to get too much into the weeds, but I don't know, you probably didn't hear much about this until Cedar Rapids had a problem about 10 years ago. And then they weren't assigning their level 1s and weren't getting people trained, so.
So,
So the state required this.
Yeah, state's required it forever. It kind of was one of those things where, when Cedar Rapids had some problems at, Washington High School, and they did a little investigation, it was one of those. Everyone's awareness was heightened at that point in time.
so this seems very straightforward to me, including the lead administrators in each space, including activities directors for the middle school and high school. And is it, each building has 2 people with the exception of West Side, which only has Shanna Putnam Dibble, but with the volume of students at that center, is that acceptable or?
Oh, sure, you hope you don't have this, even a district Cedar Rapids size might have one every 10 years kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you hope that you never have it. You have to have people assigned. One of the things that you want to make sure is you have some gender balance there. If there's an investigation that involves a female, that's one of the things that you want to make sure that there's an option. That's why it's nice to have Sarah as a district level person that could help out if need be with investigation. And that's a conversation that you have with the person who reports it.
Okay.
Which again, you hope you never have. And
Yeah.
so I hope I'm
Right.
recommending something that never needs to be used.
Should we have a second person for West Side to balance?
I would say with it's two, like you could put Sarah or I as the second for West Side, just because it's two classrooms. And all the other buildings have way more students than that.
In the past, we only had 1 or 2 people district wide. So we are certainly increasing our coverage substantially as it is.
I mean, you could say Sarah or I, or Rick technically could also be in charge of West Side, but
Mhm. And have you talked with all of these administrators, or is it assumed that it's under
I
their
just assume,
roles and
but
responsibility
yeah,
as
yeah.
administrators of our
I'll
district?
probably send out a fun reminder tomorrow.
And there's
But with the-
training
with-
involved
with-
as well.
Yeah, and make sure
Yeah.
that you're up to date on the 5-year training. That will, absolutely.
Right.
So just a question, obviously. So you had, so we have an intern in one of the schools and you have two investigators. Do they both investigate it jointly or is one investigated?
Again, I've
Because
not
of the-
necessarily been through this per se. I can tell you that I'm assuming you just pick one out and they do the investigation. If we would have if we get a report, obviously the first thing we're gonna do is work with our attorney, but we would have one person investigate. But again, like I said, there could be a gender concern that we might want to align if a female is more comfortable talking to a female or.
Or the state training, it's very articulate. So,
I just would think that might be a situation where somebody may not feel as appropriate to investigate one of those. Should it be spelled out in here about how investigators assign if you have two of them available or two of them there?
Well, I don't know how we would, I like.
So let's say investigation comes up and
Yeah.
there's something happens, I'll say we need to put this in place. How do we, how does it go forward from there? Like Shannon, do you want to do it this time or?
Well, I
we might
think-
have one a year.
I think this document, the purpose of this document isn't to talk about the process. I mean, this document just identifies the people, but is not the process of the procedure of what should happen in that case.
Because that training covers the procedure and it's.
I would assume so,
specific.
but
And I assume
Previous-
also if something does happen, having two people in the room hearing something is oftentimes
It depends.
helpful.
like, there could be a benefit when it comes time to do that. Just in the last couple of years, when we've added more level one investigators, previously it was just one individual.
Yeah.
Assigned for that, which we create some challenges based on institutional knowledge and some other places for the building.
mhm.
But the procedure as it's laid out is very
It's
prescriptive.
defined.
It's very.
You're okay with what we're doing here, Jen? Okay.
I move that we approve the level one and level two investigators for the 24-25 school year. As
Second.
listed on this document.
Second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, we will consider approval of construction manager at risk. And I just want to say thank you to Brian and Carol. They were our board representatives that shared time in this important process and spent hours and hours and hours learning, researching, asking questions, discussing. So I'd love to hear about your experience and your recommendation.
You can go on the lecture circuit.
We had three very fine companies that we were able to interview last week and we were impressed with all three of them and had to spend the weekend mulling it over and researching and came back together this morning to put together, to make our decision together.
Yeah, I agree. It was a nice and formal process. You know, we met last Friday in the morning and we finished up just before lunch, I think, with the interviews, but then we spent hours, brainstorming and talking about different things and came back and talked about some of the same things and broke it down a little bit further and we didn't take it lightly. One thing we did also do, there's fees associated with this about how much the fees would be charged. And we purposely didn't look at that until towards the end, because we didn't want to sway our judgment if one had a quite a bit higher fee than the other, based on their qualifications and not only their qualifications, but the research that was done to talk to people that have used these folks. And as Carol said, We had three really, really good candidates. I thought we knew that going in, and all three of them probably could do a wonderful job for us. Nick set in with his,
That's it, Patty's like his assistant, his admin assistant.
yeah, she sat in and we, you know, got a lot of, had a lot of information from Nick, and Nick's dealt with Larson's quite a bit in the past, but he's also, did some stuff with Myron's, and I think.
It also might have been new to him.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so, you know, it was a really, 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 really tough decision. I told these guys I usually be able to make a decision pretty quickly and live with it, and it was a really, it wasn't the case here, because there were different parts of what some do better than others,
Mhm.
and we tried to weigh those and get Nick's opinion of who he thought would have some better strengths. But at the end of the day, we wanted to make sure that we had the best school building we possibly can, and I think our final decision is a good one. We kind of get into a little bit, if you know, I just thought a couple points of why I think.
I think it's very appropriate to say why we're recommending Myron Construction.
Yeah. So Myron is out of, they have an office in Cedar Rapids. They're out of Neenah, Wisconsin. They've got about 1,600 employees. They do CMR work, lots and lots of CMR work, AR work. We picked a CMAR, and that's one thing that kind of rose a little bit to the top. They did $1.2 billion in CMAR work last year,
Mhm.
which is a lot. They have a dedicated team that just works on schools. I think they're the second largest.
Second largest in the Midwest and building schools.
Yeah. You know, they're out of, you know, they have a presence in Cedar Rapids, and they have some staff in Cedar Rapids that also does some construction work, you know, their company does. Last year they did $298 million in just school. We said it's 2023, yeah, it was about 18% of the work. You know, the past years previous to that, more of that was schoolwork, so. I think we just thought it was really, really important to have somebody that does a lot of CMAR work, because that's what we're doing. And not that the others have not done some or a lot of that, they have, but these guys have done a lot. They're kind of a dedicated communication specialist that does work with, they can work right along with the Donovan group.
Mhm.
Named Gail's here, she's name is Megan. And you
It
did,
was very impressive.
yeah,
And I talked with the superintendent of a school where that they have worked with Myron, and have worked directly with Megan, this gal who does the pre-bonding work, and they just could not speak more highly of her. Right. So I think that will, she will really add to.
Yeah, enhance the, absolutely,
What
that,
we're already doing with the Donovan group.
Right, and I suspect she probably has experience working with the Donovan group.
She does.
Maybe,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
And she is right now in other districts.
Yeah.
working with Donovan group.
they get their in-house printing, you know, so
Yeah.
it's flyers or whatever, they can help design them and we'll print them. And I think someone told you that they print something out and send it to you the next day. I mean, it's just so not only do we have to build a school and get it designed correctly, but we have to pass the bond.
communicate,
And,
Yeah.
and they rose to the top in this area. Others did, I think, would do well. But we have a dedicated department that, you know, that was part of their business just does schools, and they have part of the department does communication, helps with these. They've done over 75 campaigns here for schools, and been successful. The project superintendent that would be in this project, we met it was the neat thing about all of the candidates, they brought their staff in. There was a lot of staff came here, and
The staff who would be working with us. would
yeah,
definitely
the dedicated
be
staff for the project, and they all picked those people, and you know, they all handpicked them, and I think that was a really neat.
Mhm,
In this case, the project superintendent would work on this particular project, lives in Prairie du Chien.
mhm.
So not that others wouldn't relocate here, because others said that somebody would move here and get an apartment or something, so yeah. I think you know, the back. Again, I'm just talking because we picked Myron. They have a lot of depth with in-house people that, engineers and those type things. And all the things that the tools that they have, to help build the school and work with Nick was really impressive. You know, virtual, construction tools to, you know, even, it was just, you know, I'm happy with their decision. We've been happy with the others as well. And it was something we didn't take lightly, and it wasn't like these guys were 2 times better than others, but they, I think for CMR project, the school, they've, I think they'll do well.
I think the value of a construction manager at risk is in the pre-construction phase. And they really have the depth with all these engineers and their construction managers to be able to work really closely with our architect to work out a lot of the kinks, which will help a lot with keeping the cost down.
And be informed about supply chain issues.
Exactly.
They all talk about that, and I think that's good. For instance, switch gears, I guess, you know, sounds like we might want to order, and more than one of them talk about that, but they use that for example. But we might want to order a switch gear now. Because a couple years out, which is a big electrical piece of equipment that makes sense, but even, you know, whether there's a lead time on tip-up concrete walls versus we might have really good masons in this area, but may not have good masons somewhere else. You know, they got that background and database from schools that they've done, and say, well, Northeast Iowa, you guys got good concrete guys or pretty guys, but they I think we'll end up with a great project, and these are just another part of the team that we have to make it happen.
Right.
They do self-perform some services, but they also emphasize getting bids from local contractors and subcontractors. So I think that was another important thing about them, which was similar to the other companies as well. Because that's important to us too, for our locals to be able to bid on the project.
Right.
One thing to talk about a lot, but safety is a really big deal in this project. You know, we're gonna be building a new school right next to an active school. And all of them, none of them took that lightly. That there'll be fencing and they all have safety directors and different things. And that was kind of reassuring too, that they all take that very seriously.
Separate entrances and separate staging area for all of their construction vehicles.
Yeah. Well, this is such a serious investment for the future of our community, and we just want to take every step that we can to make sure that things are done right. So thank you for going through this process. And I also appreciate the fact that you had a really objective plan to approaching this process. I like that you didn't look at fees before thinking about services first. You have a clear rubric for us to see how you scored each one in each area. And I just appreciate the process that you went through to evaluate.
You excited? Well, yeah.
Thank you for all of the hours that you both put in, and Sean and
Yeah.
everyone
So
else.
we can continue discussing. Aaron, do you have any other questions about the process, or?
I think my questions are actually very well answered by the conversation already this evening, so.
So even though they have gone through this process, we do need approval from the board to make that recommendation.
Move that we approve the committee's recommendation.
And we're gonna enter in negotiations with Myron, which we assume will bear a signed contract, but it's technically, the recommendation is, I'm sorry for interrupting, Ron, it's a recommendation to enter into negotiation with Myron to be our construction manager at risk.
That's what I meant.
I'll second it.
Okay, Darlene, are you clear on the motion? Got it. Okay. Any other questions or further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. feel like I want to ring a bell or something every time we make one of these big decisions. It's
Watching the Olympics.
so positive.
This feels like a big one.
Yeah, this is important. So thanks again for that. Okay. The next item on our agenda is discussion on conference alignment and next steps.
So, about a week and a half ago, we were informed that our request to join the Upper Iowa Conference, the recommendation from the mediation, so that's the Girls Union and the Boys Association in conjunction with the attorney appointed by the Department of Ed. Recommendation is that we not be placed in the Upper Iowa Conference. And that's all that we have. We don't know necessarily the rationale behind that. We can surmise that it's competition size. The next step will be to have our hearing with, this is a recommendation to Mackenzie Snow, the Director of the Department of Education. I think typically in the past, she's gone along with those recommendations. But we still will have a hearing with Mackenzie Snow, and we'll need to have it here in August, and I have not seen a date for that. And we will, they kind of asked us when we were free, and I finally just said, just schedule it, we'll be there. So we will be prepared to drop everything and go to that. So since it's a hearing, it will be, representatives from the Boys Association, Girls Union, because they're the one who make the recommendation, and then we'll kind of present our case. I don't anticipate it being like a mediation. I think it's just, we have an opportunity to say, this is why we believe we should be in the Upper Iowa. We have talked about Plan B, but we're not super comfortable in discussing it because we don't want to put anybody else on the spot on what our Plan B would be like. And now I will defer to, obviously, Adam's been involved in this every step of the way, and Ron, with a keen interest and a membership on the Girls Union, as you guys, those two have been involved with it much longer than I have with the whole conference process, but.
And legal expertise is another reason why Ron, which I encouraged Ron to participate in this process. Do you have anything to add, Ron?
Well, it's a frustrating process because there are criteria which is supposed to guide the discussions. And the first one is every school is entitled to be in a conference. But then there are criteria saying, yeah, and you got to be real close together, and you should all be about the same size. Well, that first one and that second one don't fit for a 3A/4A school 15 miles from the state of Minnesota and 40 from the state of Wisconsin. So it didn't work. It's very frustrating that the process produced a one-sentence decision without any rationale whatsoever. But here we are, and we are still pursuing option number one. I just hope we don't wind up having to pursue options number 2, 3, 4, and 5, because we are, in all honesty, we have 0 good options, including the one that we're pursuing. It's just the least unacceptable for the needs of our students.
Adam, anything to add?
No, I guess. The only piece that I just said, I've said it before, that I feel pretty strongly and shared in a lot of different pieces that for the purpose of interscholastic activities at the high school level or any level, they're supposed to enhance academic performance, the academic opportunities for kids. I guess that's the priority that I continue to lean on in my eyes, and making sure that I'm expressing that every opportunity I have to.
Yeah.
It's great work.
I know that. Thank you, 3, for your involvement thus far. I personally am deeply disappointed that we're where we are, because this decision is going to affect generations ahead. It's going to affect, academics, time on the road, time in school, time going to bed. That affects health, wellness, everything. And not that anything has been decided yet, but as decisions are made, I encourage the 3 of you. I'm also desperately seeking to reach out to other elected officials to make sure that they're informed too, but I know that the metrics that many conferences are looking at are school size and miles away. But Decorah is unique not only because we are 15 miles from the Minnesota border, but we don't have a 4-lane highway that goes to our town. So miles to and from Decorah are slower miles than between Cedar Falls and Cedar Rapids. And between Ames and Fort Dodge. We are different. And we don't fit this scenario. And I think that needs to be part of the metrics and the information that is shared with the people making this decision. And I want to make sure that at this next phase that Director Snow is fully informed and that we continue to advocate and share information with others that are helping to help her get to that decision, that they have all the information to make decisions that affect the future of the Decorah Community School District.
Question to go back to what Ron started off with. So state guarantees was the word used, but states that every school should be able to have a conference to compete within.
Yes.
Would we say that it's a fault of the state if we cannot find a conference to compete in?
It's a fault of changing socioeconomic or demographics, I guess, maybe the better word. 30 years ago, the 7 schools of the Northeast Iowa Conference were all relatively close to the same size. That is no longer the case. So it's a matter of which of the criteria is going to take priority over the others. I don't know that, blame or fault is really possible in this circumstance. It's just a weighing of competing values. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, we are entitled to something. Just hope that something that they say we're entitled to doesn't involve, traveling 4-hour round trips on a Tuesday night in January, or
And the
worse.
Iowa Conference is split up into like larger schools and smaller schools, is that?
It is as of next year.
Sure, that's right.
So another unique metric that we have talked about before, I think, as part of this conversation, is that Winnebago County has one of the highest transportation budgets in the state of Iowa. Already, we are an outlier in that way. And to add miles to a conference that we're participating in, does that make sense?
I think that's one of the parts that's in my mind. So say we're told, no, we can't be in the upper Iowa. The next closest conference means we're looking at 100+ miles each direction. The financial burden of that on a school district seems rather monumental on the state's part.
Absolutely.
To say, yep, there's a conference right next to you, but we're gonna say no to that because you should go compete much, much further away. I find that almost ludicrous on the state's part if they're not considering the financial aspect, let alone the educational aspects that you've already brought up.
Yeah,
And physical needs
Yes.
of coaches and kids.
Yeah.
From both, and this is not just Decorah, but financial, it's gonna cost, if we are placed in a conference that's far away, it's gonna be expensive for those visiting schools to come. It's gonna be miles on, so this isn't just affecting Decorah kids, this is affecting whatever conference we're in and all the schools that have to travel to Decorah for Decorah events.
We could just find someone willing to donate a small jet. Our problems would all be solved, or a large jet.
You got
Create a
the,
problem solving right
Yeah.
there.
I could just see the headline tomorrow.
I know.
A cardboard moles jet purchase.
Yeah.
Of course,
No, not- not
of course, I'm being facetious. I do forget
We're
that.
just wanting to accept a generous
Oh,
donation.
well, willing to accept donation,
Yeah,
gently used jets.
We only could find a pilot.
Yeah.
I guess to get back to the conversation, my biggest fear is that a hasty decision is gonna be made without fully thinking about all the impacts. Just looking at school size and just looking at the number of miles, and that does not tell the whole story. So my plea is for decision makers to be informed on the impact of Decorah and schools that are.
Yeah, and right
Competing
now,
with
this
Decorah.
is impacting, this process is impacting us and Waverly Shell Rock and Hull Western Christian. In the future, there's gonna be a lot more because socio,
Mhm.
economic dynamics are changing statewide, and this process is just gonna snowball. So at some point, somebody's gonna have to get in front of it and do something to clarify the values so that the process can work. Because right now, it's not.
Mhm. Okay, well, there's not a decision to be made tonight, but is there anything else to be added to the discussion for the sake of this
I
topic?
think you made it loud and clear that these guys got the work cut out for them. They better be good negotiators.
For sure.
They are.
And I second it.
I know they are. I know they are, and I just, it feels good to, I just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can before you're in that room. Because I just will continue to reach out to elected officials to get their attention and make sure that everyone's informed.
There's some definite pieces in process, whether it be the application of how the process is supposed to move, whether the administrative rule was followed, and whether there'll be accountability and whether or not the administrative rule will be followed, and how that impacts kids along the ways. But it's very clear that the process is not working. In terms of what it's in theory.
I agree that the process has not been followed, but I do feel 100% confident about Decorah's process and protocol and the steps that we've taken to follow. And thank you for, I just feel like we have a good paper trail of following process and that we've had very public conversations with our stakeholders in the Decorah School District to keep them informed of what's going on.
We just hope to hear in your future when the hearing will be with the director of the Department of Ed.
We'll move on. The next item on the agenda is to approve spring and summer coaches. And we have been approving coaches for many meetings this year, so this is looking ahead to spring and summer. Any questions? It looks like there's few blank spaces, which is nice.
I don't necessarily have a question, just an amendment that earlier this evening we approved hiring that assistant girls swimming and diving coach, so
mhm,
you know if those are considered linked, but
mhm.
that blank space at the moment.
Yeah,
just
is
took care of
is
earlier.
now filled. You're right. So 0 blank spaces.
There's still others. It just says open instead of being blank.
Okay,
Unless we've got a coach open that I don't know about who's filling.
No, if they existed.
you're right. There are a few open for some middle school
That's like a
track positions.
And I suppose as a point of clarification, this is done generally, we're working off of who the coaches were last year. And they just completed their season, so we're recommending them for next year. Obviously, to Director Zander's point, we're still gonna work just because we have open spots, we're still fill them and they'll come in, and just so happens that the assistant coach overlapped with the presentation of this. This is like a one time a year kind of thing, and the other ones are just done as needed.
The other piece that's added in there is volunteer. Big steps to. As well.
Mhm.
Yes. one observation I would make with regard to this is we are certainly not unique in having a lot of positions that we're trying to fill, and from a statewide perspective, it's getting to be a near crisis for some districts. And if you don't have any coach for that sport, it's
Someone usually
scenario.
decides, even if it's right before this season starts, somebody does step forward typically. But it does seem like we are hiring more people than we used to, who are not already in the, like, teachers in the district.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we need a recommendation to hire all these
We
wonderful
need,
people.
yep, we need to approve.
I have moved to approve the Schedule B recommended contracts.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, next is the first reading of the community use policy. And this is a draft. This is a complex topic. The Decorah School District, just say it lightly, the Decorah School District shares its space with many groups and organizations. And with our limited capacity and just to support our staff that are allowing use of the building, we need to have a protocol and a policy that supports them and being able to make very clear yes, no decisions. So the drafted policy has a description, and then it also goes into kind of a fee schedule for use of the school facilities, naming individual groups. So let's have a conversation about the structure of this and get into detail of it.
So, yes, I can say that this is kind of for me, the Groundhog's Day of board policies, because it kind of hasn't ended for me in other districts, and that's because you're always looking at who's using your buildings, and you want to make sure you're accessible, and at the same time, you've got to protect your custodial staff and overtime and costs, and we can't be having events and losing money on them. And one of the things is just as people schedule, do we charge, do we not charge? And so we met as a group with Adam and Jake and Christy as a scheduler, and just kind of started talking through. One of the things that I wanted to do was assign specific names of activities to groups, so that you kind of had a feel for who is in a group one, who is in a group two, and making sure you can compare and draw straight lines and say, oh, yeah, the Decorah Basketball Association is run by, it's a community group, but it's all Decorah students. That's the same as Decorah Volleyball Club is very similar to Decorah Park and Rec. And so we're trying to be consistent, fair to all groups, so that we treat everybody the same, so that, if we charge one like if there's a group that's not made up of all Decorah athletes or participants, and we charge them, but a different group doesn't get charged, like that doesn't make sense. So we just need to treat everybody fairly. So among other things, we listed every group that's ever used our building, and that's why it's as detailed as it is. It doesn't need to have that level of detail, but we just kind of wanted to make sure we didn't leave anybody out, and we had kind of a robust discussion about it. I think it's overwhelming to look at, and I'm not joking that we would routinely review this 1 or 2 times a year at my previous districts, because there would always be a situation that would come up about, oh, why is this group getting charged? Why is that group not getting charged? And there are a lot of things that are board decision regarding this. As an example, one of the first things we did in Central City was groups were using our building on the weekend, and they were having like a tournament, so they were making money for the Mad Cats Wrestling or the Little Cats basketball team or whatever group it was. It was a fundraiser because they were doing a tournament. They were charging fees and people were in our building. Well, with that many people, you had to have custodial help. And so what I discovered was they would do an activity and keep all the profit, and then we would pay the custodian. So we were kind of funding their program as by providing custodial staff. And they weren't reimbursing us for the custodial costs. So we kind of started to put things in place, and one of the things that the board did at that time is they valued the building so much, and they were like, we don't want anybody in our building without a custodian, you know, because we gotta keep garbage cans empty and toilet bowl flushing. So they mandated that it be staffed. If it was an 10-hour tournament, then they had to pay for 10 hours of overtime for a custodian, which was a good amount of money. And so then the youth organizations, that lasted, I guess, 9 years. And then on my last couple board meetings, we were like, we redid that and rescinded it. And so when I use that example, that was like a board kind of a pendulum, like if people are gonna be in a building, we're gonna have a custodian the whole time, and the pendulum swung to, we'll pay for, the groups can empty the trash and flush it, you know, get the toilets cleaned, and we'll pay for a custodian for 3 hours to come in on a Sunday and Wednesday and clean up after the tournament. And that, of course, saved the youth organizations a lot of money. I get that as an example of how you guys look at this stuff and the questions that we may come back and ask you. Ron and I had a discussion about it, and I think, you know, whether we get it into the weeds with all the groups, I think Ron is like a two-pronged test. Are they, you know, is it all Decorah residents? Is it all Decorah students or residents versus is it a mixed group from outside groups? Obviously, we want to provide, traditionally schools look at this and say, if you're all made up of Decorah students or all Decorah residents, you should probably have access to our buildings for free whenever possible. And then the other part is, if they're charging admission to something, regardless of whether they're all Decorah or not, if they're charging admission, that means they're having a concert, they're having a tournament, they're having something, they're generating revenue. There's a lot of people coming into our building. Those are probably ones that we want to look at a fee schedule for. So that's probably a nice way to simplify and make it easier to understand with getting into all the groups. And we also, you know, we've got a lot of community groups that are really important to Decorah, and we certainly want them to be able to use our building. We just kind of want to make it fair and make it easy for staff that are signing to know, is this somebody I bill or not somebody I bill?
Yeah, we want it to be an objective as possible.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the status quo has evolved in kind of a piecemeal approach. Has initially been driven by a set of guiding criteria from the beginning. Some groups come in and it's like, okay, they won't be charged, and others have been. So as I look at this draft, you know, I think of the first page as, you know, that really doesn't change. I mean, these are things that are just common sense. Don't move the furniture. No alcohol involved, you know, just obvious things. The difficulty comes in the fee schedule, what those fees should be and what should guide who pays what. Thinking about it, I think of, you know, 5 or 6 different criteria that might be incorporated into a decision about, you know, how different groups are put in similar categories. So to be intentional about that and try and be, you know, internally consistent across groups, I think it would be good to maybe table this pending further discussion about what those competing values are in terms of, you know, a for-profit entity versus a not-for-profit entity, or a group of students versus a group of adults, and, you know, a variety of things. So my suggestion, and I'd be willing to participate in it, would be to sit down and try and work with building administrators to come up with some guiding criteria, and take another run at this in a month or 2.
Yeah, and I think it's important too, as like an ongoing policy, that individual groups are not named, or to have it be more of an official document rather than, to me, I think this is a good beginning of having just to help us know kind of who's in what category. But when it gets to the final policy, I would prefer that individual groups not be named, that it's just the,
Yeah, ideally, you would have
Description.
criteria spelled out that it would be clear where people should fall.
You may have a list of those people and how they fit into their use previously, like a group.
right, like a supplemental
Yeah,
document or
yeah, I
something
think-
that's separate.
I think that makes sense.
Or even to build a rubric of, that might be another way to go through a series of questions or
Yeah.
criteria.
I think we have some of that set up within here, so there's already some good structure built in. The other question that comes to mind for me is. So we're setting up this schedule that includes. Called groupings of local, not local, for-profit, not for-profit, adult, student. But. And this gets maybe to more of an Adams position, but how do we? Say two groups want the gymnasium, how do we differentiate between the two, and does this also incorporate that tiering system within it as well? So I see this functioning as a. Who's using the space and how do we charge? Perhaps charge certain groups, but not how do we differentiate between the prioritization of those groups using the spaces?
Yeah, and I'm wondering too, like, what's the sense of urgency of finalizing this? I want to support our staff as much as we can. But at the same time, I don't want to rush this process, so we're missing anything.
We have a policy in place. It's not as detailed as this, so rush wise, it'd be nice to have something, but it's not something we necessarily need by next month. We met one time, we got more information that we want to sit and look at as a group. We put it on the agenda because it was a first reading. I really do mean to warn that, like I've said to a number of board members, it may not be a 2 reading policy, it may be a 3 or 4 reading policy.
Okay.
Or it doesn't come back next month because we're still working on it, and just understand that, and I think, we'd be glad to take up Ron, maybe let's get a little bit farther down the road with where we want tonight was just kind of putting it in front of the board and listening to your questions and trying to explain where we're at, but, absolutely,
And since the 4 of us had met, and tried to reach out, and I reached out to a few colleagues and tried to get a few different examples.
Yeah.
Just knowing them, it was good for us to have our initial meeting without having meeting preemptive pieces, and then I think we got a few different examples that came back in upon our initial looking, simplified some things like.
Right.
Hopefully, it's very complex for.
It is.
Every district.
Yeah.
And as you look at this and it says, and they, each group, maybe charged a rental fee, will we develop criteria for how we know if they're going to be, how they will know if they're gonna be charged a rental fee or not, so it's not,
This is part of why we.
so it is consistent.
Your question is part of it.
I mean, even under group 1, it says they shall not be charged, but they may be charged custodial services. I guess that's part of the work going forward is to figure out that criteria.
and there's 2 things there, right? Are we charging to rent our facilities? And do we also charge them custodial fees? So there's 2 parts, like, obviously, the custodial fees aren't needed every time, but the building space is. Probably the end product of this work is just a real good form that everybody fills out. Maybe there's a Google link online that they can request it. It feeds into the form, they get it approved and it's spelled out, yes, it's approved and it's gonna cost you this much money based on the information you provide. Or it's not, whatever the fee is gonna be, a combination of rental and custodial. So trying to streamline and clarify.
Be intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For that, I think the way this has developed over the years, it has not been intentional. It's been piecemeal.
Yeah, that was a really good description. And when you add somebody and then you don't compare it back, maybe you're not putting them in this with the same criteria in a group, and so. It's possible that somebody's been able to use the building without paying rent when other groups that meet the same criteria would pay rent, and we just
To
want
that point, that's why we need some board involvement, feedback as well, because it's a community, there's a big problem.
Yeah, well, thanks Ron for offering to help. I think Ron would be a great person to help with that.
As well, it mirrors a lot of what I already do.
Yeah.
Great, great. Yeah, your perspective would be valuable too. So Tim and Adam will be in touch when your help is needed in the time to come.
Perfect.
And thanks for your work.
Well, you guys
Yeah,
just
yeah,
finished.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't want to scare Ron and Aaron, but it could be more hours, but
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be good.
They're up for it. I
Yeah.
can see it in their eyes. Okay, next, it's important that we approve a schedule for the superintendent evaluation. This is typically done in the summertime, and I sent an evaluation form to each of you individually last night, and that is a document that is shared only between you and me. So I'd like those to be completed individually. And then before we meet for a formal evaluation, I will compile everyone's information together. So that we can see that all at one time. My intention was to give you 2 full weeks. However, I want to have a conversation about when I'd like this to be a special meeting and thinking about other special meeting topics that we'll have later this month. Let's be thoughtful about whether or not we can combine them or not.
Absolutely. I can tell you that I emailed the board, so I hope we can receive the signed petitions to put the Geo bond on the ballot on August 22nd at 5 p.m. That fits into a timeline. We're hearing good news about the number of signatures even this week. But we have some events that week of August 19th that I anticipate us being well over the 673 and I want to give it enough time to get, if we're gonna get 1,000 signatures, let's get 1,000 signatures. So that means August 22nd is really would be, we could do it August 26th, but we have to get it turned in by August 28th. So, and working with Emily Colby, I think August 22nd makes me feel a little bit more comfortable because not that it takes us a long time to get them turned in, but I think that should be the meeting that we receive it. So that being said, I'm not sure all the board members can be here in person on the 22nd, but I'll defer them to answer. And
Well,
I would just recommend that we find a time to do the evaluation when all the board members can be in person if possible.
and we don't have to have both things in one meeting. We could certainly schedule a special meeting one week and a special meeting the following week, but I just wanted to have that conversation with all of you since we were together to think about our schedules and what you prefer.
I'll be just coming back from being out of town on the 22nd. I'm not sure I'll be back by 5 o'clock. So I prefer not to do the superintendent evaluation at that date. But you could do the.
We could do
board
we
meeting
could have the
with-
5-minute, 10-minute board meeting to
Right, without
receive the
me.
petition.
Without you, or potentially, would you consider joining by telephone? And calling
I'll be
in?
driving in a car, so if I have service, yes.
Okay. Okay,
And that's why I think the 22nd that's the date that I really feel comfortable receiving the petitions. I don't anticipate that having to be a long special meeting. Because we are receiving the petitions and hopefully, again, we get a number that's 1,000 people and we go, let's accept this petition.
okay. And I know that Tim did a great job of communicating and anticipating dates needed. So maybe the 2 dates that he suggested, we could continue to hold both for the different purposes. Is everyone okay with
The
that?
26th.
So the 26th might be the other special meeting, which
Would be the evaluation.
would be the evaluation.
The 22nd, the 26th.
Yeah, so like a Thursday and then the following Monday. And
Mhm,
the Thursday, I just put 5 p.m.
mhm.
But then the Monday we would do 5:30 or does it?
I think the-
Yeah, either 5 or 5:30 is fine with me. Aaron, how about you with your schedule?
Same, I just have to align things so that the high school divers have somebody.
Yeah.
There with them.
Yeah, one comment on the evaluation too, for particularly the 2 new people. You might look at this form that Cindy has sent out and think, this is a waste of time, which I have thought many times. don't really think the form is all that useful,
Hear that?
but it's what the state says that we have to use, so,
So do it.
yeah, we're stuck.
Do it.
And sometimes just personal comments. But no.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, could be.
No, it's.
Absolutely, it's kind of like those report cards. You know that. those
Teacher,
are-
I'm.
Yeah.
Teacher evaluation,
Yeah,
which is they
yeah.
put out, so.
There are 10 standards that arguably could be about 3, and some of them are restated 4 different times, and you still don't understand the answer, but.
Yeah.
So
So
does
my
life.
work card said Brian will be taking over 4th grade beginning this year.
That's pretty.
Oh, I-
We're in 8th grade. Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like we've come to a consensus. We don't need a formal approval on that, do we, Darlene? Okay, so moving on. We need to have a discussion on our legislative priorities for IASB, which stands for the Iowa Association of School Boards. And so attached is a PDF document of the 2024 legislative platform. In conversation with Ron, we were chatting about this and he reminded me that in years past, this has been a very, very lengthy list.
Mm.
And this year, it is not. So I hope that you've had the chance to review the suggested, the proposed legislative resolutions. And I'm open to having a discussion and talk about our priorities together.
Yeah, just scroll all the way to page 14 and you get to the number of things. That's what we're supposed to pick from. So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
first 13 pages are aspirational and I was on this committee for a number of years and we used to have about 30 to 35 proposed resolutions and now it's
8.
down to 8. So we got a little less things to choose from.
We choose between these, do we choose a certain number of them and prioritize them, or do we take all 8 and we prioritize?
No,
them?
generally in the past, what we've done is taken 3 or 4. So.
So let's start with our top 3. With a list of 8.
Yeah. And if you're looking at the bottom of the page numbers, page 13. Right, but it would be 14 as you scroll down. Isn't it?
Oh, right.
Yeah, it starts
Yeah.
with 13.
One that we have had on the list for several years in a row is the mental health provision,
Mhm.
which is number
This is
4.
very pertinent to what's going on right now. State and schools.
Yeah, number 2 is high quality teacher workforce, which I feel is important. Just with the challenges that we've seen in the last several years with public schools.
I'd say number 7, we believe supplemental state aid is a critical component.
Which is obvious, right?
Well,
It's been on there every single year,
Yeah.
the last 20 years.
I
And
mean,
yet,
that would- I know the rest of these are gonna happen without that.
I feel like 2 and 7 are run similar. You know, if there's adequate SSA, then there's more ability to compensate staff and have that retention talked about number 2.
Mhm. And,
Number 7 is, yeah, we want it, of course, but we need to continue to work.
I mean to say that some of these seem like no brainers, but seems. Number 1 seems like a no brainer to me.
hard to disagree with any
It's
of them,
hard to disagree with the
just a matter of
the
priorities.
data that sits behind that as well.
And I would say Decorah Schools does an excellent job.
Yes, oh, yeah, not picking on us
Yeah,
and where that falls, but
and I believe it's.
yeah. I mean,
So our perspective on this is what we want IAS to
Advocate for.
advocate for,
In Decorah's perspective, you know.
yeah, with the legislature.
I do want to point out that number 6
I,
talks about believing in it gets into private school choice,
Transparency.
transparency. And it talks specifically about what the what IASB supports and what they continue to oppose. So just to talk about opposing educational savings accounts, vouchers, which, you know, using taxpayer money in a way that's not being held accountable or audited. I think that's a really important issue and one that is a hot topic this last 12 months. So
I very much agree with you.
I know that many of these are obvious, but this one to me seems at the top of my heart, with a sense of urgency to continue for public dollars to go to public schools.
The one other factor that I felt over the years in this is there are some where you are standing in front of a steamroller saying, stop. And you do all you can and you still wind up flattened and
But,
where we go.
you know, we were elected to these positions to do what's right,
Yep,
no matter how hard it is or how big the steamroller is.
yep.
I agree with you on number 6, and I think that given the situation and how new this is in Iowa, that might, I would think that would be my number one priority here, if we are giving them a list and we're prioritizing them.
And that's, yeah,
Is that what we're doing?
we're gonna put in our top 3.
Okay. That would be definitely one of my top 3. Number 6.
I mean, don't get me wrong, we can like all 7, but we just need to pick
Yeah,
our top 3.
if you,
I think 1, 6, and 7 would be my top.
yeah, if you say you favor all 8 of them, you haven't really.
Was that?
Those are also my 3.
Is it 1 or is it 2?
Number 1 for me hits
Literacy.
because it gets into early childhood education more deeply and thinking about, are we fully funding pre-K so that students get to school and are prepared, are set up for success versus kind of just assuming that is going to happen? Will the state put forth efforts to do so, to make sure that that is grounded?
And it also
that's
mentions
important.
area
Brings up-
education agency services.
It does, and it also brings up English language, so
Mhm.
thinking about the students who are probably going to be most challenged in school to learn and achieve. If we're going to put educational benchmarks out there, we should be providing the scaffolding that every student needs to be successful.
Yeah. Great.
I think two's also very important.
Yeah,
There's no question about that, and they've done a better job of helping us financially, you know, you recruit new teachers and stuff, but this district, and every district, used to be that you still have lots of applicants and now we're not, so. I think I think we just go with 4 and include 1, 7, 6, and 2.
Yeah, agreed. I like that.
sounds good to me.
Is there ranking?
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we need to
Do we need to rank
organize?
So it'd be helpful if they were ranked.
I would suggest that number 7 is the highest, most obvious priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think 6 is a high priority also, and maybe the next.
Not to go back to Ron's earlier point, I agree, I think 6 is a priority. This one feels like standing in front of the steamroller per se, that we might advocate, believe, and accountability, but we don't necessarily have that ability to maybe force change in the way that I agree wholeheartedly, but I just don't know that there's going to be the ability to do so until perhaps larger legislative changes are made.
But I do think it's so new now that they're still working out the kinks, and so for IASB to really be on top of this and be pushing additional legislation for guidelines. I'd like to support LASB in doing that, I guess,
I don't think we can afford to, for different people to be in different spots. I think we need to,
No, I mean, I think the
Say it.
numbers that are coming forward and how many dollars are being directed
yeah,
in places and what they expected versus what reality was are quite
Right.
different. So not saying I disagree with this one, I just,
okay, so,
I have reticence based on the political atmosphere and
okay, so Brian, just
I
to
would hope that
review,
an auditor of the state would have a little bit more financial or numbers to back up some of the reasons to dig into number 6. and
I
that's
think
not a
our
dig on
current
Carol.
state auditor has worked really hard. I think he's working really hard.
Yes.
Okay, so
But-
Brian has suggested that 7 is number 1. And have we,
I don't think we need to beat ourselves up too much because they're gonna take them throw them into the pot with all the other schools.
Right.
You know, at the end of the day, they're
I agree.
they're all
I think
important to
seven
us.
is, 7 is priority. I mean, the more dollars directed to students, the better.
Sure.
Every school, every
Yeah.
student is going to be.
okay, so the other priorities, other, in addition to 7, 6,
It's 1 and 2.
1 and 2, okay.
And Darlene, can you go online and submit these?
I actually just pulled up the website, so,
Okay,
Doing it,
yeah,
in the past, I was just,
yeah.
okay, great,
So it's done.
it's
Yeah.
done, okay. So next, when you're done submitting that, Dr. Cronin, you can move right into your superintendent's report.
Okay. There's a lot of stuff there, and it was just kind of some documents that I wanted to have, a copy of the sample ballot, among other things. We're going to repost the buildings and grounds position, increase the salary range, see if we can't get better candidates. I did email that out to the board, and we've interviewed a few candidates for that position, so I think this time around, maybe I'll invite a board member or two to sit in on those interviews and give us some feedback on that. In the meantime, looking at posting for a nutrition secretary, that's position that Christy had before she replaced Lois, and she's done both. Just kind of looking at our workload and making sure stuff gets done. Regardless of what we do with the buildings and grounds position, we need another person to help do that stuff. So those are 2 postings that we're looking at coming up. The recommendation in the personnel, as a reminder, was that nighttime custodial differential pay. So we increased that from 50 cents to $2. We need to make sure we attract custodians. In checking with other districts, they have a differential. They have a starting pay that's already a little higher than us, and their differential pay at night. Ours was 50 cents, wasn't competitive. So you just think about our night activities. Clearly, that's a priority. And I had put the special board meeting for 26 because I want to receive the petition signatures and get that process started. And then for fun,
20.
The 22nd.
22nd, excuse me, thank you. And then besides all listed, all the attachments, there's the history of Decorah that we wrote for the paper with some help from Liz Fox and a couple other people. So that's the report.
Any other questions for Tim? Otherwise, we'll move it on down to Kathy Dietzenbach for our financial.
Right now, we have our auditors showing up on Monday, so a week from today, they're going to be here. We usually spend a good 4 days. They'll be using the space in here. This morning, when I checked the warrants, we received the last payment of the 4th quarter for our ESSER funds and our title funds. So that now can be in the book, so I can get clear some of my CAR errors. Just now, we're just trying to get to the CAR, more receivables and payables coming in until the end of August, and then I'll be able to run some reports for you for next month.
So is this the end of ESSER?
This is the end of ESSER. We had to be spent by June 30th.
And we did that.
We did that. I spent every penny.
Good job, Kathy. Good job. Great. I know that's an intense process for the on-site audit, so cheering you on from a
Yeah.
distance next week.
Yeah.
And we'll look forward to more detailed reports in the months to come. Okay, we've reached the end of our agenda, so I will call meeting closed, adjourned.